Good afternoon, everybody. Graveyard shift, is it, after lunch? Firstly, thank you, Russell, for inviting us up here today to do this. And for those of you who don't know me, my name's Stuart Huff. I've been fortunate enough to work in the housing sector on the builders merchant side for 18, 20 years. And it's an absolute privilege to work in this sector, it really is. What I'm hoping to do today is just talk you through perhaps some of my reflections and our reflections on how we can better work together as a merchant and a housing association to deliver the outcomes that I know that you are all trying to do. Which button is it? There we go. So the titles of the slides from merchant to strategic partner, and I think it's a good title in the sense of I think we're a big cost component for your organisations in terms of the amount of money that you're spending on materials to fix homes every day, and how we all work together to help you deliver that better. I think is a really important point, and I can tell you that we all go into this, and I'm sure everybody else goes into this, hoping that every single project we get involved in is a great success, but for some reason along the way, that's not always the case. So I just want to sort of unpack a little bit of perhaps our perspectives as what some of those issues might be and how we might want to think about doing things a little bit differently going forward. A little bit about how we interact, how do we build trust between us, I think is important, and what things can we do to start creating some value for you together and make your organisation more efficient. A little bit about us. I'm not going to do a shameless plug, but if you haven't heard of IBNG before, and there's no reason why you would have done, we are a company that owns 19 brands across the UK, across 5 specialist different building-related divisions, with about 1,800 employees and 150 branches dotted around the United Kingdom. And these are the brands that fit underneath the IBMG business. And as you can see, we've got 5 separate divisions: a builders merchant division, a plumbing and heating division, an electrical division, a roofing division, and a timber division. So we do cross the entire spectrum of the builders merchant value chain. And we've created a separate division called Supply Chain Services, which looks after relationships with local authorities and housing associations that can draw on all of those. So that's the reason why we're here today. I think we are a little bit different because we have all those brands. We've got a lot of different sector experience across a whole range of categories. We have some very long-standing brands that have been around since 1870 or whenever it was. And they are steeped in the local independent builders market, which is a little bit different from a traditional national play. Both have their skills and expertise, but slightly different. Where we've decided to focus our attention to make our particular propositions work is around partnering with a lot of third-party experts who are going to be much better at certain things than we are. For example, in things like IT and logistics and things like that. Again, I won't dwell on everything that we can do, but the point of this slide, I suppose, is just to say, we offer all of these services, which is, similar in many respects to the same sorts of things that you might see with a Travis, a Jewson, Hughesgray, or whatever. The point is not that we offer them, it's how are they deployed and how do we work with housing associations to make them work properly. And I think that quite often is where the challenges start to come about. So just in terms of my own sort of perspective, so I think I started thinking about where does it start? If it's going to go wrong, where does it go wrong? And it normally starts, I think, at the very, very beginning of the procurement journey. Because when you think about the relationship that housing associations and the merchant sector have together, they are, by their very nature, because of the need to conform with normal public sector procurement rules, quite sort of binary in terms of this is what I want, can you give us a price and a tender response for these things, without a whole lot of what would have been very helpful, useful, collaborative collaboration around what's the solution what's the problems you're actually trying to solve. And if we had those conversations way back at the front, then by the time the tender or whatever procurement route you've gone through actually comes out for us to respond to, people would have a much, much better idea about how to really add some value to what you're trying to achieve. So there's a real sense, I think, that that's quite an important aspect. And I don't think the procurement rules help with that. As a consequence, quite often, and we had this, I mean, I'll give you a great example. Yesterday I did a pitch in front of a housing association in the southwest where this was a mini competition. The document that we got was a 3-page document on this is the specification for what we want. And when we got there, so we obviously tried to do what we could to pull it all together. And then when you get there, they tell you about all the other things that they've got going on that they want to try and solve. But you've got to solve it in that moment because you haven't been able to talk about it before. So it's not a very collaborative process. And as a consequence of that, I think when you win things, it becomes about short-term, how do you deliver on what you've just agreed to do, and doesn't therefore create a world where you're thinking about what's the long-term vision of our partnership and what do we want to try and achieve all the way through the various stages of that agreement, not just on day one. And I think that's part of the reason you get some complacency, you get frustration, you get why isn't this working, and so it goes on. As the contract begins to develop, that lack of change plan, that lack of direction in terms of plan, I think makes change sometimes quite difficult. And what I mean by that is if you think about commercial considerations that people have invested in certain aspects of a contract in order to make a contract work, if you're then trying to think through, well, I want to do something completely differently, what about all these leases that we've just entered into and all these other arrangements that we've kind of got? And it makes it very, very difficult to actually make substantive change throughout the course of the contract. Couple that with this sort of slightly relentless focus on what are very, very traditional output-driven KPIs. So we always have the same sort of regular 4 that get shown to us, like how much stock have you got on the ground, how many credit notes have you issued, all those sorts of things. Those do not lead to improving the work output of what the merchant does, and certainly don't help, I don't think, you in terms of delivering on the objectives that you might have with your own client base. And I think that that kind of thing limits our ability to do any meaningful change. The other area that I know is a source of frustration for many housing associations is that very few merchants can truly cover the entirety of the supply base in terms of product. So they'll be brilliant at builders merchants, they'll be brilliant at plumbing, but they won't have an electrical team. And therefore, when it comes to dealing with the electrical part of that component, the operatives don't get the service that they want. We're not providing the level of expertise, and there you get a frustration. There's ways around it, but the important part is that that's really got to be a really well thought through plan about how you do that. And I think alongside that, your organisations and our organisations, of course, they're hard to change, aren't they? They're hard to sort of shift about in different directions, and therefore it's very difficult sometimes to come up with those plans to make things work really well. But there are things you can do, and this is sort of just some of the reflections that we have, is that it is really important to have that long-term plan. So if you've got a 5-year contract, what are you trying to achieve over those 5 years for every single part of the cycle? And are you trying to achieve, for example, an improvement in first-time fix? And what does that need to look like over the course of the contract? And if you can then break that down into real meaningful analytics, you can work out, well, how do you actually get to the answer? Because there are ways to do it. And that way you can develop some real meaningful plans. And if you've got a reasonably good plan about what you want to try to do over a 5-year period, and and you bring the right people into the room, I think you've got a far better chance of making it happen. We have, as does every other merchant in the country, an absolute wealth of category commercial experience, procurement experience, advice, all those sorts of things. However, getting that insight out on the table in front of a housing association, I think is notoriously difficult and difficult to put to get out to you without a real structure about making that happen. And I think that's because quite often the relationship between the merchant side and the housing association is all going through basically one account manager and a few guys on the ground. And actually, we should be opening up our entire organisation to people like yourselves, so we can really add some value to what you're trying to do. And then alongside that, develop some much more meaningful KPIs around what are your real objectives in terms of what you're trying to achieve for your client base. And that might be things like tenancy satisfaction rates, it might be first time fix, it could be whatever it is. But if we're measured on helping you deliver those performance objectives, not have we got 98 O-rings sat on a shelf, that's a far better way, I think, of thinking about how we would partner together going forward. And now I'm going to hand over to Rita just to talk through a few more.
Thanks, Stuart. For those that don't know me, I'm Rita Ladd. I'm the Sales Director at IBMG Group. Been around the housing sector for a number of years, so yeah, know a few faces in the room today. So I know Stuart's obviously talked about kind of like some of the challenges and what we can do, but this is probably going to a little bit of solution mode. So obviously we've talked about partnering with the experts. One of the experts is a van stock specialist people. We don't want to do it ourselves. We want the experts to do it. So it's all about getting the right people in the room to do what we need them to do. And the partner company we're working with, some housing associations want to go out in different lots, obviously with that knowledge and sector experience of plumbing, heating, P&H, electrical and things like that. So what we're looking is a van stock app that you can basically build multiple merchants on. So we're not necessarily the sole supplier. So when it comes to ease of use, operatives don't have to keep going on to different applications to log into different systems, and everything goes to that one channel, and HAs are able to see dashboards and productivity on one platform. So it makes it a lot easier if you do want to use a multi-merchant solution. And I suppose if you coordinate van stocks, and I know it's always been a hot topic, van stocks, and getting it right, and that cultural change we have to go to, we're still talking about trying to get van stocks right. But if you coordinate van stocks with deliveries and keeping the operatives where they need to be, which is out on the road and completing the jobs, and going back to what HMS was saying about, that customer, it's all about the customer at the end of the day, and making sure you're completing it first time and you're not having to go back. If you complete that with a van stock and delivery service, you can pretty much nail it that way. So by talking about van stocks is one of the ones in terms of the most efficient gain. So what we're talking about tendering, yes, you can have 80% to 60% weighted on price in terms of driving down to that widget and cost, but the huge operational savings you can get by nailing it is thousands, and it's quite staggering when you look at it, when you actually do the calcs as to how much savings that is potentially there on the table. And tech, we're all on this journey together in terms of culture and changing that culture, but as humans, we just don't like change. So trying to get people bought into that technology and what's available is taking people on that journey to make it happen. Another solution we've looked about is yes, we've got 150 branches around the UK. It's not about having a branch on every corner. It's about having the branches in the right area, in the heart of where your housing stock is. So we've got different solutions out there that we can put in terms of, if you've got your own stores, we can put tech in there to control it, so you don't have to have a manager there checking stock coming in and out. We can configure it in terms of if there's space storage available, we can convert that. And I suppose because of the challenges people have in terms of hitting KPIs and contractors being committed to, the SLAs and getting stuff done in kind of like 24 hours, having solutions like this available in terms of something that's quick, easy, 24/7. Since COVID days, Screwfix, all those sales where people are able to buy something online, us as humans are buying everything. I mean, I stood at Birmingham New Street yesterday ordering something off Amazon because I needed it. So it's that tech that we all do in our own private lives. So how can we use that into kind of like a HA world, an operative world, to drive that efficiency? And I suppose another one is about logistics. So yes, we're a materials provider, but it's all about logistics. It's about how do we get materials from A to B in the most efficient way, with working together, and that is it. So, you know, you have the challenges of, yes, we're a merchant, we've got our own vehicles to be able to deliver stuff out, but we've had challenges before where, you know, you've got one vehicle allocated to a customer and it's like, well, you want 3 drops in the morning as first drops. Well, what do you do? So for us, it's about, yes, we'll utilise our own vehicles where we can, but it's also about working with other partners out there who can do things on our behalf. So, so it's about how do we, transportation, getting around London, Manchester, Birmingham, it's all become very difficult, congested, how much time that takes, you know, moving from A to B. So we're working with logistics specialists to help us. So depending on what component it is, they'll deliver it for us. And you're looking at kind of like 45 minutes at the moment. So you look at that in terms of travel time, how much it costs you. If you actually sat down and looked at it, how much it costs you to down tools, go somewhere, pick something up, come back, it's going to cost a considerable amount of money. So it's all, so in terms of the commercial improvements and the financial savings we can help with, I suppose it's all about kind of like that transparency, trust, partnerships. So, you know, because we're the only merchant out there that can offer you kind of like build, plumbing and electrical under one roof, we know that when you're going out there to do third-party sales, they are going to be genuine third-party specialist sales. It's not just going to be, you know, just because of ease of use, an operative wants to go there because he wants to talk, you know, because you talk the same language. It's genuine third-party transactions. You know, using our category experience, you know, there's a wealth of knowledge out there. How can we help customers like yourself to make sure you're getting the best pound for your buck? We've done things with customers where they're looking to go out to do like boiler deals with different manufacturers and things like that. How can we all work together? So us, the customer and the supplier, to put a tender together to make sure we're getting the best, you know, value for money, and we're all in it together. Any bulk deals you can get, you know, let's drive those suppliers down to give you the best value for money. And sourcing and finding alternative products. I know everyone's special in their own trades and they want the right products and stuff, but it's about, you know, by having a container, for example, you're channeling your trades to only buy what they're allowed to buy. So again, it controls your, like the products you're putting in. I can see your face going. The products you're putting in, so you know exactly what you're putting in. So it standardises product going forward. So I suppose, in summary, there's loads of improvements out there that we can all do together. You know, we're on our journey as a supply chain services. You know, there's a lot of new stuff we're doing out there, but it's really, really exciting, and it's about just, you know, trying to change that culture shift from where we are now to take people on that journey. And I know it's all about, you know, we've all talked about culture, customer service, and you know, how do we change that behaviour? And also it's paramount that two organisations work together to go on it, because if you're not in it together, it's very, very hard to be able to drive and push those improvements. And I suppose there's a lot of tech out there. You know, there is so much tech out there that we can all use. You know, like we talked about AI, ChatGPT. There's loads of stuff out there, but it's about people wanting to embrace that change. That's it from us. Fire away with any questions.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Are there any questions from the floor? Come on, we've all been through this materials malarkey over the years. I can't believe people haven't got a question to ask.
Oh, we've done really well and answered them all.
Well, maybe, but I doubt it. Come on, any questions on what you've heard? Well, I'll start off with one. I think you nailed something, actually, Stuart, in what you said. And it resonated with me because we spoke, and we're fortunate with Direct Works, we've got affiliate members and those are commercial organisations. One of those is Procure Plus. And Mike Brogan is a wise guy and he's given us some valuable advice. And one of the things he said is, And it was a challenge back to us, and I think you nailed it really. He said back to us when we talked to him about procurement and the rest, and he said, the problem with you in this sector is you don't actually get your heads around what you actually want. It's too waffly. It's never nailed down. You want a bit of this, you want a bit of that, but I might want a bit of that. And I think you said something around, you know, in terms of what you were saying, you've actually got to get that down to the real, I guess, the real granular stuff to fully understand what you're trying to do. So I guess my question then on the back of that is, how do we work together? And I know the TP in the room as well, but how do we work together in terms of not just collaborating, establishing, you know, I think delivering and probably promoting what can only be an improvement for all of us if we could actually nail what we've always tried to deliver, which is, you're right, a really good specification on the back of what we really need to get a good outcome that I think satisfies both. And not using profit as a dirty word. I mean, you know, commercial organisations are in there to make money. Whether we think that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's what you're there to do. And we have to accept some of that. You know, within reason, accept it. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I think it's two things for me. One, we recognise there's a cost in business development, right? Us spending our time sitting down with potential clients to talk around what is it you might actually want is time and effort and energy on our part, but one that we're actually really quite happy to make. So, and I think part of the problem that I've seen, Russell, is that procurement process or that collaboration process starts about 12 weeks before the tender goes out. And really, I mean, if I think about how I run my business, if I'm interested in something, I'm going to go and start researching it. I'm not going to wait till I've got 2 months before I've got to buy it to work it out. So I think that taking it out of the procurement journey itself, I think would be a really, really good next step. And it doesn't then have to be about whether it's us or TP or Hughes Gray. It's just, you know, immerse yourself in what's available, come to some conclusions around what you think you might want to do, and then just stress test it with people to the point where you go, well, actually, if we do that, I think that's the answer. And we, and I'm sure everybody else, is more than happy to engage in that process in that way, outside of a specific procurement journey. I think that's where it goes wrong.
I think the other thing to add to that as well is there's multiple stakeholders in organisation. So from a high-level strategic perspective, they want one thing, middle management might want something else, and then down on the ground it could be something different. And where those three kind of like different levels, so to speak, don't all come together to kind of like say, this is kind of like what we want, that's where it kind of like goes wrong right from the start. Because if you look at it from a strategic perspective, they're the ones that are going out to procure, and they kind of like go, that's their vision, that's the route they want to go down. And then when you come to mobilise it, the guys on the kind of like managers and guys on the ground are kind of like going, well, why are we doing this? That doesn't work. So there's already a disconnect from organisations. So I think a key thing is trying to get all three stakeholders within an organisation to agree what that looks like beforehand, and then that's your journey then, isn't it? Almost mapped out as to how you work with all the different levels. And a key thing for us as well is having somebody in that business. So, you know, working with our customers and having someone almost embedded in businesses, because you can't do it from an arm's length. You need to understand what that business's culture is and that journey they're going on, and that's the only way it's going to work. You can't make these things happen from almost from a distance relationship.
And so I was just going to build on something actually, but referring to who was the chap that did the previous presentation on AI. If you think what's going to happen in 10 years' time, I would imagine that one of your tenants is going to pick up the phone, take a video of the thing that looks broken. It'll go, yeah, that's on the back of John's van. He'll be with you in 20 minutes. You know, that's the world. Mm-mm. That's the world that we're going to end up stepping into. You can't. There's no way the way we do all of this right now will get us to that point, because we've got to think completely differently about how we connect our organisations together in a far more strategic sense. So, it's really important.
Great point. No, thank you for that. That's a great answer. Anybody else? Yeah.
I'd just like to agree with that comment there about that pre-market element. in procurement, and generally people who know me in this room probably know me because I get involved in a lot of IT procurement, not just repairs and contractor solutions, but I've been involved in material procurement as well, and I think it's a constant mistake we make in the sector, in that we don't do the pre-market exercise, we probably don't understand procurement properly, and probably 2/3 of the time I work with clients, within the first 20 minutes I'll say, right, are we going to have a meeting with the procurement team? And they'll say, oh no, we don't want to speak to them, they'll stop us buying what we want to buy.
Exactly.
And my response to that is the procurement team are there, they're just trying to do a compliant job and protect us from ourselves. And actually, any procurement team you've got will encourage you to go and do a pre-market exercise. And it's really important to get on board with that. I think the other point that I think you made that's really relevant as well is make sure that that pre-market exercise get people involved from finance, from audit, from and particularly people in this room, everyone in that whole customer journey, get them involved. So, you know, you can do that in a very lightweight way. So you can look at 4 or 5 options out in the marketplace, and that means that if you do that sensibly, you've got a good means of justifying your case for what you're going to get to market for, and it should, you know, whether you work with someone like me or you do it yourselves, then it shapes your tender process, so you actually know what you're going out to buy, rather than doing a mad rush trying to do that in 12 weeks because you're leaving your previous supplier, and you want to mobilise really quickly, and before you know it, all you see of your suppliers is you see the account manager every monthly for those KPI stats, and you're no better off. You're no better off with what you had before or what you had before that if you're not careful. So that's what I would say.
I think,
you know, do the pre-market stuff. Don't be afraid of it. Put some time aside for it and dedicate probably as much time to do that pre-market phase to work out exactly. I think what you said there. Work out what problem you're trying to solve.
I think that's the key, isn't it? If you said first time fix is our #1 issue, we've got to get that down. I mean, it might not be if it was. What sort of trade-offs would you be prepared to make about what that solution looked like in order to achieve that? And that's really how it starts. So, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Thanks for that. Any other questions anybody wants to raise? Yeah?
Yeah, really, I was just going to echo what the gentleman behind me said there from a Procure Plus perspective, and picking up what Rita said. You're probably not just doing a materials procurement when you're doing a materials procurement, you're doing an IT procurement. It's not just senior management, middle management and your operatives. It is get finance involved. All those stakeholders from across the business need to be involved. When you're getting all those people involved, 12 weeks isn't enough. It's 12 months. But yeah, the stakeholders are varied across the width of the business, not just the operational materials side as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Anybody else want to raise or ask a question? Yeah, Olivia? Mike, cheers.
Thank you. It's more an observation. I think partnership and collaboration, absolutely. And we're coming away from a transactional relationship. It's not about buying materials here. It is around tapping into so much knowledge. It is a technical hub. And in terms of your critical friend, in terms of what is the solution as well, especially around the AWABs. We know that we are going to be so challenged in terms of how do we get first-time fix, coming up with solutions, the products that we need as well, the training. So that collaboration with, the not necessarily the merchant as such, but, you're talking about a group. It's so valuable. And
absolutely.
It's key, for us to be able to achieve that.
Well, we should be part of your ecosystem, shouldn't we? Not just they're the people that have got a load of timber, right? And if we all head off in that direction, then I think you change the dialogue completely.
And it's just going on to that expertise side of things. So I was out with customers yesterday and taking them around some of our network and tapping into that knowledge. So going out to a plumber's merchant or electrical wholesaler and things like that, and they're just completely blown away with how much knowledge there is there. And you're just missing a trick if you're not tapping into it. And like you said, there's so much experience. So together, you're a lot more, it's a force to be reckoned with rather than just working in silos and, you know, and not tapping into it.
Yeah, thank you. And anybody else?
Can I just nip in with
Of course you can.
a tricky one?
Oh, go on, I knew you would.
I'd just like to ask you why you think there's such a widespread inconsistency in terms of the service that associations get. So you could have a managed service, Manchester, Birmingham and Liverpool, same merchant, completely different service.
It's a tough question, isn't it? I mean, I think part of it might be some of the stuff we described. So how did we get to this point anyway, sort of moment. The other part of it, I suppose, is there are competing priorities in retail organisations across a broad range of customers, and they're all trying to, you know, a local branch at any one point in time is trying to do lots of things for lots of different people, and unless you've got the model absolutely buttoned down, nailed on with wherever it's being delivered from, it has variation. You know, as soon as it comes into contact in battle, something goes wrong, and so it is difficult to do, but you tend to find the best experiences, I think, that we've certainly had, tend to be where you try and ring fence the setup we have with HAs and local authorities away from the kind of normal branch world as much as possible, only because people focus on it. They know that's their job. If you're giving them this part and something else, a load of other things to do, I think that's where things start to get a little bit more tricky. But it's not a perfect world, is it? I mean, and unfortunately, people are people. But you are absolutely right. It does happen. I don't know if I don't know if that's a great answer, because it's so nebulous, isn't it? I mean, I still can't get my head around it to this day sometimes.
Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of it depends on that, kind of like the drive, doesn't it? Because you as a supplier could be pushing stuff as much as you can, but if they don't want to, they're not, you know, in receiving mode, then you're not going to move forward, are you? So that whole partnership piece and that whole setting it up right from the start is paramount in terms to how that journey is.
Hi, Rita. So really, to answer that question, is a merchant branch is just going to look after its normal customer base, isn't it? That's the bottom line, because that's where its focus is. That's where its revenues and profits are going to come from. As Stuart did say, you know, a standalone situation is the complete way to go if you can, because obviously you're ring fencing it. It's specific to the client. It's going to give the customer what they want, the long-term vision.
It's definitely easier, isn't it? I mean, you've got the recipe's easier. I wouldn't say it's impossible, though, to do. I mean, there are lots of examples where we've got customers in this world, my world now, where they're absolutely delighted with the way the branches work. I think it comes down to how what's getting implemented and how it gets implemented, and how you make it work in that environment, and you try and, where we can, separate out the people from the day-to-day branch world from from local authority customers, if you can. That's the best way it works, I think.
But having some of that tech as well, like in terms of like those containers and things like that, you are setting yourself. You know, you don't necessarily have to have that human interaction, and it gives you that consistency wherever you go, because they're literally going in, buying, getting products, and going back out again.
Okay, thanks for that. So, been once, been twice, final ask. No more questions? Is that it? Can we just show our sign of appreciation? Thank you.